Over 65% of enterprises are undergoing major platform divestitures or spin-outs, and they're reporting accelerated product focus, faster roadmap execution within 12 to 18 months. This is driven by simplified governance and sharper customer alignment. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead for the AppDev practice, and I'm joined by Jon from Omnissa. Jon, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Paul. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I'm really excited about this conversation. Why don't you introduce yourself and the company?
Yeah, great. So I'm Director of Product Management at Omnissa, looking after our Horizon virtual apps and desktops portfolio. I had a long career at VMware prior to Omnissa, which is the former EUC business that was spun out from VMware in mid-2024. We kind of like to think of ourselves as a new company with 20 years of experience in the digital workspace ecosystem.
Super exciting. I mean, it really is an interesting market right now, right? And it's great to have your depth and wealth of experience here. But Omnissa is carving itself out to be a clear position in a crowded market, really focusing on simplification, openness, and end-to-end application lifecycle support. This is really aligning to enterprise priority shifts. And we see that positioning has really increasingly become relevant, as we mentioned in the opening stat. But Jon, I want to jump right in and start talking about, well, you mentioned it. Let's talk about the evolution of Omnissa since post-VMware. Can you talk a little bit about the transformation after the spin-out, maybe highlight on the renewed focus, strategic priorities, and maybe some of the unique challenges that you're addressing in the application development lifecycle?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is our vision is really unchanged, right? So we talk about wanting to empower employees of a business to do their best work wherever that may be. So from anywhere through, any device, any time that they're allowed to work, through smart, seamless, and secure experiences. And so continuing with that kind of vision, as an independent company, we've been investing for growth in our Workspace ONE and Horizon products and our AI-driven platform. And all of this is towards what we call an autonomous workspace vision. So this idea of self-configuring, self-securing, self-healing workspaces. As part of that, we're focused on ecosystem expansion. So working with all the kind of partners that are important in this space and that our customers want us to do, open APIs to allow for those kind of integrations with our technology partners. And we're really trying to, converge experience management and security when we think about this kind of digital workspace ecosystem and provide a platform that can kind of unify the data, the automation capabilities and AI, all together within that. I think when we think about, kind of application sort of life cycle, our kind of piece of that, if you like, is very much around the kind of delivery of applications to end users, whether that's to physical devices or virtual devices. We made big investments since we've been an independent company in that. For example, taking our app volumes technology, which historically was for virtualized environments, to now work with physical as well, meaning that administrators can, capture an application once and deliver it anywhere they want to.
Yeah, Jon, you touched on a lot there, and it's exciting to kind of think about how you're driving towards simplifying infrastructure complexity. One of the things I hear about when I'm talking to CIOs and organizations and teams trying to deliver their applications, the two main barriers they run into is complexity and skill gap issues. So when you look at modern IT infrastructure demands, the scalability, efficient systems, and you're trying to really reduce that complexity while maintaining flexibility. And it sounds like you're on board with that. It sounds like that's kind of the main focus. Now, we also see automation is kind of put in place to streamline and provision management across hybrid, multi-cloud environments. This is also cutting the, excessive resource use, which allows for that flexibility as well and the burst capacity. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the future, about cloud native and hybrid innovation, and what does this mean for enabling dynamic scalability across these different frameworks?
Yeah, it's as you say, there's very much a trend to kind of want to make the best use of both your private data center infrastructure, as well as leverage the hyperscalers, of course. And so, we've historically extended the automations that we had for, if we think about Horizon, for delivering workloads from on-premise infrastructure to be able to deliver workloads from cloud infrastructure as well. And to do that in a way such that the end user doesn't have to know where that workload is being delivered from. So for example, if you want to have a deployment that is typically on a day-to-day basis delivering resources from your on-prem data center, but in a DR scenario, kind of flip over and leverage some cloud resource, you want the end users to kind of not really know about that and have the same experience. So we put a lot of work into kind of being able to unify those kind of deployments, make sure that functionality is consistent across them, and even to, we have that logic to be able to kind of determine, for example, in a DR scenario, that the standard sort of workload is not available, to kind of flip over to a backup one or something along those lines. I think that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is the kind of expectation in terms of sort of automation, that it's not just about kind of provisioning in the first place, but it's about actually automating resolution of issues and things like that. And that's where we've invested a lot of work in what we talk about as digital employee experience.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance here, right? You want to simplify, reduce the complexity, but you also want to drive innovation through this open ecosystem, right? Because that's really a big part of when you talk about cloud native, and you talk about the different infrastructure that's around it. You want to make sure that the ecosystems are really transforming by IT, really enabling that flexibility, interoperability, and potentially even avoiding vendor lock-in, right? And that's where some of these vendors or I should say organizations are looking at. They want to be able to adjust dynamic and fluidly across their ecosystem. So strategic partnerships really are allowing businesses to really adopt the best of breed kind of technologies to modernize IT and really work towards their KPIs, their goals, right? And so when we look forward, decentralizing these architectures and modular frameworks really will help drive towards long-term agility, really empowering these organizations to stay ahead of the changing in the digital landscape. It sounds like that's what your goal is for the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is something in particular as an independent company that we've had the flexibility to do, for obvious reasons. And so, we did a lot of listening to our customers as part of that process of becoming independent, and as one of the big areas. And again, if I look at Horizon, we've expanded support so that workloads don't just run on vSphere. They can run in Amazon Workspaces Core. They can run on Nutanix, AHV, and other platforms to come in future. And so we really want to have that kind of mindset that, customers should be able to choose a platform now, but not feel like that means they're locked into that forever. They want the flexibility to know that, either they want to flip completely to something different in a few years' time, whether that's from one on-premises hypervisor to another, or from on-premises to cloud native, but also importantly that they might want to run a hybrid model, right? So they want that flexibility to be able to, for example, burst their capacity into the cloud when they have an immediate need to do so.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I think of my practice area that I focus in, I do talk about it in the context of past, present, and future. I talk about it in the context of heritage environments, but modernizing those heritage environments to a present state, but thinking about what's happening in the future. And, that is a big part of what you're talking about, the ability to flex across different ecosystems, different environments. And the evolution of application lifecycle really reflects this shift from a rigid manual process to more of this, like you're saying, like a flexible, holistic approach that's driven by automation and security. That's the key here, security as well. And when we look at that modernization approach, we know that modernization is a trend that's just going to continuously happen. But the focus on today is to continuously integrate and focus on that integration and streamline management to really save resources and reduce risk. And looking forward, the future of defined by, of course, I have to say this at this point, AI-powered predictive analytics is really part of the adaptable framework, right? So can you talk a little bit about that element and what that means to Omnissa?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a couple of different things there. I mean, when we think about the kind of app lifecycle, I mean, one of the key things that kind of plays into it that we see is just the sheer volume of updates, for example, to applications that happen over time. So we've actually been tracking this for a number of years. So we just take a basic set of sort of Windows OS and kind of Office suite productivity apps and things, and we see hundreds and hundreds of updates going on throughout the year. And this is actually growing every year. Combination of sort of security patches, as well as more kind of continuous delivery models enabling more updates. And so we see that IT needs a way of kind of managing this demand. So, some of our technology allows for automated capture, the management of those updates throughout the kind of phases, dev, test, UAT, rollback, etc., and the way to deliver them across physical and virtual. We see interesting things, in terms of sort of automation here. Having an open sort of API ecosystem means that we have partners that can do things like spot when there's a new version of an application, automatically capture that, and then kind of we can ingest that, take it through those different phases that I talked about right through to delivery. So really kind of leveraging that ecosystem to kind of build the automated capabilities. The other aspect of this, I think, is our kind of digital employee experience technology, and that kind of space that a lot of customers are looking for. So in other words, not just being able to deliver applications, but spot when there are problems with them, root cause them even, and then remediate or suggest remediation. So we definitely see that, that kind of AI powered platform to be able to, particularly in the realm of sort of spotting problems, gathering information, being able to suggest a remediation or even just execute on it as a huge area of investment and focus for us.
Yeah, and I want to touch on a couple of pieces there because I think you're really getting into the clear differentiation. And when you look at the platform market, it is crowded, right, between the different platforms that are out there and also the DIY approach. So when you look at how you're positioning yourself around operational simplicity and lifecycle consistency, at a time when many platforms have become more broadly kind of focused, but they're harder to operate because they're not seamless and they're kind of, uh, dare I say, putting together a bag of bits, right? But like this focus on the buyer fatigue and over engineering stacks, it does tend to have increased cost and complexity. It sounds like you're saying, well, if you deploy the way your approach is, you're going to have the operational complexity reduced, but also have a faster time to value. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's what you're doing.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And look, as we mentioned, like having an open ecosystem is really important to us, and we recognize that there's many other products such as the platforms that workloads run on that we want to integrate with as well. But we also want to provide a kind of consolidated platform, right? We talk to customers and we find, frankly, crazy numbers of tools that they require to deliver their digital workspace solution. And so we think there's a huge benefit in a stack that can do much of that functionality in a consolidated, consistent way. I think the kind of consistency is a really interesting point that you mentioned because, on one hand, a lot of what we do is about making sure that, hey, all your devices are secured in a consistent way. Your applications are kind of captured and delivered consistently. So users are all using the right versions and things like that. At the same time, we recognize that you've got all sorts of different users. You've got users with different needs. You've got users running different workloads and things like that. And I think that's where being able to kind of monitor and use machine learning to kind of spot problems, adapt workloads to, to provide a good, consistent experience to end users is really powerful. For example, we can do things like work out that a virtual machine that software is running in is not really sufficiently powerful for the workloads that are there, and either automatically or sort of suggest a kind of right sizing that, if you like.
Yeah, well, let's double click on that for a real quick moment here, because I think that what you're saying, what I'm hearing from the developer perspective, is developers like to use their own environments, their bespoke environment, their tool sets, whatever they're using. So what I hear in this approach, in this platform approach, is it's streamlined, it's cleaner, it's easier to deploy, faster time to value, but your openness is really focused to be in a competitive advantage. I think that that's really where the key, in my mind, the key takeaway here is because as long as you want to utilize your tool set, there's a risk between organizations go, well, I don't want to move off my tools and whatever I'm using, but you're saying I can use an openness kind of approach and still able to have the best of both worlds. Does that fit?
Right, exactly. And to the point I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure the kind of fundamentals are delivered by our platform. And particularly this kind of this relates to security, where we find, we talk to customers who have 30 plus kind of different tools that they're using to kind of deliver a secure digital workspace. And the kind of pain that we hear from IT about the complexity of managing that, finding the people with the skills to kind of manage all that. So we want to provide that kind of baseline of capability to deliver the digital workspace to the end users, whilst at the same time providing that flexibility to integrate where needed, with best of breed tooling, platforms, etc.
Yeah, Jon, this has been a great conversation. I mean, we're kind of coming up at the end here. I'd love to get your closing thoughts, but maybe you can touch a little bit on, as part of the closing cost, the readiness for AI-driven operations, because I think that's where a lot of the audience, in my opinion, is kind of thinking about at this point. Like, how do you, like, 2025 was the year of like trying things. 26 is really about implementing and making it happen. So in your closing thoughts, maybe you can touch on that, and where would the audience go to learn more as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing is we've been using machine learning for a long time now in relation to being able to kind of measure and analyze and present remediation steps for kind of common problems. We're moving into that realm of, being able to kind of automate that remediation, potentially even without very much involvement from kind of IT. But I think one of the key things that we've really focused on is that the autonomous digital workspace, if you like, is being very much shaped by IT, but we don't see it as just about technology. We see it about empowering the people that are really at the center of it, all the end users that we're trying to help do their best work without any unnecessary complexity. And so we think that, to kind of the landscape is just evolving so fast in so many ways, and businesses need to kind of adopt a mindset of being able to adapt and leverage innovation, and it means thinking about how you can use AI to improve the employee experience, how you can use AI to simplify and secure the environment, but also at the same time maintaining trust through data governance, sovereignty, etc. So we think, there's a great opportunity for organizations that prioritize their people whilst channeling the AI capabilities. We think they'll be strategically in a very good place to grow, innovate, and set the standard. And that's really, our mission. Like, we're committed to helping our customers to thrive in the midst of so much change in terms of, the way that users are working today. Please, hit us up on our website, omnissa.com. We've got a ton of resources, technical, marketing. Please take a look.
Jon, super excited to have you on today. This has been great. Lots of great insights, lots of thoughts for the audience to think about and how they kind of mature and go along their journey on developing and putting new applications out there. So thank you for being my guest today. And a big thank you to all of you who've tuned in. We do appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talents shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.